coming. My name is Anisha, Kashyap, and this is my STEM project, Butterfly Effect. So a little bit about me. I've always wanted to be an engineer, and I love math, I love science. So here at Grandview, I'm in Physics C, I'm in Cal 3 Diffie Q, and I've taken Computer-Aided Design and Engineering Tech. And outside of school, I'm in TSA, Technology Student Association, Marching Band, and NHS. And I don't know where I'm going to college yet, but I am majoring in engineering. So the inspiration behind my project was that way back in August, this woman on TikTok, she made this dress, and she called it the Medusa dress. And it had snakes on it that kind of moved around, and I thought that was super cool the way she integrated the technology and the fashion and turned it into one cohesive piece. And also, the show I watched when I was younger, Project MC Squared, one of the characters, she wore a dress, and it had butterflies on it, and they flapped and they flew, and I thought that was awesome. So I kind of took these two things and wanted to create my own kind of technological dress. So I wanted to make a dress that had butterflies on it that would flap their wings and move using code, Arduinos, and motors. So first of all, I want to get into my advisors. I have two great expert advisors from the Colorado School of Mines. Dr. Fall, who could not make it today, who is an electrical engineer and has specific research in computational imaging, biomedical applications, and space applications. And then Dr. Coulson, who's here, he has more specific areas in signal processing and algorithms and design. And both of them have helped me so much this year just because I don't know anything about electrical engineering, so it helped a lot with giving me ideas and helping me with questions that were hard to find answers on online, and it was so much help, and I thank them so much for that. And then I have my support advisors. I have my parents, who are my emotional and financial support. Whenever I was a little frustrated, they would help me out, they would get me back on track, they would motivate me, and it was amazing. And then I have my best friend, Briona, who's in the back. In class, she helped me a lot with just reading over everything, making sure I didn't have any spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes. And in class, if I was like, oh, I don't want to do this, she was like, no, walk in, do your work. And I have my uncle, who's also an electrical engineer, and he was kind of an advisor where I could show him my project, and he would have a little bit more of a say in what I was doing because he kind of understood it more than, say, like Briona or my parents did. So my original timeline, at the beginning of the year, I wasn't totally sure what I was supposed to be doing. So my timeline was really vague, and I was just like, I'll research for a little bit, learn how to code, design for a little bit, and then it'll all just come together and I'll test and improve. But I wasn't sure the specifics of it, so I didn't really know what I was trying to do. Obviously, my actual timeline is a lot more complicated than that. So I spent a lot more time researching and doing lessons on just coding and electrical components and circuits, and I spent pretty much all of November and December doing that. And then only after I did that did I actually start doing CAD and designing things in SolidWorks, and then finally towards the end of the semester is where I got all my parts together and started designing them, putting them together, and adding them to a dress. So my very initial research was super simple. I don't know anything about electronics, so I had to figure out what motors were, what Arduinos were, what websites I could use that would help me and get me to the end product that I wanted to get. So I've been using servo motors, which are basically just tiny motors that spin from side to side, just precision movements, which I use to do the side-to-side movements of my butterfly wings. And SparkFun Electronics was a very helpful website for me. Basically, you can buy any electronic product that you want for any project that would help you. And another big thing that SparkFun Electronics has is they have a bunch of tutorials that span from beginner level to expert level. And I use this a lot at the beginning to just learn about what Arduinos were, what motors were, what sensors were, and it really helped just give me that basic insight into what I was trying to do. And then, from the beginning, I knew I needed to use an Arduino. I kind of used an Arduino over the summer, and I was like, okay, I sort of know what this is, let's use it. But basically, it's just like a chip you can put code into, and it'll execute that code. And so I'm using the most basic Arduino, an Arduino Uno, because just through the research I did said that it was the most commonly used one, it was the best for projects, and it was best for beginners. And I didn't want to get something that was too complicated where I didn't know what I was doing. And another big resource that I used was Tinkercad. Now, Tinkercad is a website where you can basically simulate any circuits that you want. It gives you this bank of breadboards, motors, lights, buttons, anything. And instead of having to buy all these things and materials and using them in front of you, you can just use them and simulate them online and just put the code into them like that, and it's a lot easier and simpler. And I did a lot of tutorials on Tinkercad. So I did basically all of December and half of November, I was doing a bunch of tutorials on like Tinkercad on like how to use a breadboard, how to use LEDs, like light sensors, temperature sensors, all of these crazy things. And the nice thing is that it uses block code, and I don't know anything about actual code, but I can do blocks. So I would just put things into the blocks, and it would transfer into actual code for me, which was great. But then I realized, like, this wasn't actually helping me. Like, what, was I actually going to use a light sensor? Was I actually going to use a temperature sensor? Realistically, no. But it took up so much of my time that I was hoping it would be useful in some sort. So this is when I started actually designing the butterfly. I knew this was something I could do because I'm comfortable in 3D design and I knew what I was doing. So this is my initial sketch. Obviously, I'm no artist. I literally just drew what I kind of thought a butterfly wing would look like and just sketched around it and measured it up. And that turned into this that I created on SolidWorks. And this little extension that's coming off of it basically has a cutout in it that fits over the motor. And that's what is how it will move using the motor. And this eventually turned into these, where I put cutouts, making it look like a little more realistic of a butterfly wing and just look nicer. And I printed it out in my friend's house, and it was amazing because it fit on my motor the first time I ever tried, and that was so exciting. And around the same time I was doing this, I was also coding the motor. Like I said, Tinkercad, I love Tinkercad. So instead of having to mess with all these wires in front of me on my desk, I could just whip out my laptop and pull up Tinkercad and just simulate it all on the website. And just put in these blocks, and it gave me this code. And instead of having to like research how to code and what I needed to put into C++ code and what an Arduino needed, it just gave me this. And so this, I could just put into the Arduino Cloud Editor, which just would automatically put it into the Arduino for me. So now that I had one wing down, the wing was moving, the motor was moving, it was great, so exciting. Now I had to figure out what I wanted to do with the second butterfly wing. Because obviously butterflies have two wings that move, but I had no ideas. I was like, how am I supposed to make two butterfly wings move in two different directions using one motor that's moving in one direction? Because I didn't really feel like using multiple motors for one butterfly. That felt so excessive to me. And so eventually I was like, it's getting a little late in the year. I'm just going to leave one butterfly wing moving and one not moving. And so when I decided this, I was like, okay, gotta go back into SolidWorks and design another stagnant butterfly wing. And that's when SolidWorks started hating me. So I had downloaded SolidWorks on my laptop, and this was the 2025 version of SolidWorks, but on the school computers it was the 2024 version of SolidWorks. And basically, if you open it in the 2025 version, it can't open again in the 2024 version. But then the SolidWorks on my laptop stopped working. So I had no way to open my files on the school computers because they weren't compatible with 2024 version, but I also couldn't open them on my laptop because SolidWorks wouldn't work. So for like 3 weeks, I was just sitting there trying to figure out how I was going to get my files. I was so convinced that I would just have to completely redesign my butterfly wings, which was a little upsetting. But eventually, one day, I just went back into the OneDrive history of one of my butterfly wings, and there it gave me back to the 2024 version, and I could edit that. And thank goodness, because I would have probably started crying if I had to redesign the whole thing. So this is when I was able to add more motors onto my Arduino, which was super exciting because I want more than one butterfly. And so, like previously said, I just simulated the whole thing in Tinkercad because I had this idea in my head. I was like, I'm assuming if you connect these things to a breadboard and then connect it to multiple motors, it should work, right? but I wasn't totally sure if it would. And so one night I just whipped out my laptop, got on Tinkercad, and it worked. And then I was able to add all 4 of my motors to the same one power source, same one coding source, and same breadboard, which was really convenient. So this is when I decided I don't really want my Arduino and my dress to be constantly hooked up to my laptop, because that kind of defeats the point of wearing the dress. So I was like, okay, I'm going to buy a battery pack. And I was told that like 4.5 volts for my 5-volt Arduino would be close enough and it should work. So I bought a 4.5 volt battery pack and it didn't work. And I was very sad. So I was like, okay, maybe it needs to be higher than 5 volts. So I bought a 6-volt battery pack and it also didn't work. It technically moved the motors, but it was so slow and it barely worked, and I was like, this is not going to work. So eventually I did some research and realized my Arduino needed between 7 to 12 volts of power and not 4.5 or 6. So finally I bought a 9-volt battery pack and it worked. And that was very exciting because I did not want to buy another battery pack. So finally I got to the adding them to the dress part. And this is the inside of my dress. You can see over there, those are the 4 motors that I have to sew in. And then the breadboard, the Arduino, and the battery pack, which are all also sewn in and taped in. And I had to sew them in enough that they would like hold up with the dress because they're all so heavy. But I sewed them in, I painted the butterflies, and they're now in the dress. So this is my working dress. You should see the butterfly is moving. So I very happily was able to get all my butterflies onto their dress and get them moving. So lastly, at the beginning of the year, we had our 5 project objectives that we had to make. So my first one was to learn how to code. I did not learn how to code because I felt like to code my Arduino, I needed to learn C++. But the C++ I would learn using Code Academy or something, I didn't think would be useful for coding circuits. That was more for like coding websites and stuff. So instead, like I said earlier, I just used Tinkercad. I also wanted to learn more about like circuits and motor coding technology, which I think I did because I was able to learn a lot about the motors and about Arduinos and about circuits, which was super cool. Develop better presentation skills? I think so. I mean, here I am presenting. I think I'm less nervous than I usually am, so that's good. One of them was to fine-tune my SolidWorks skills. I would say I kind of widened my skills less than fine-tune them because previously in like CAD, I would get like a specific set of rules and like a design that I would just have to recreate with measurements, and it didn't really need to be perfect in the sense that it didn't need to be printed and worked in real life. But for this was something that I had to create like by myself. It was totally from scratch. I had to think of the measurements by myself. I had to make it accurate so that it would fit on my motors. So instead of like fine-tuning those skills, I kind of expanded my skills because I was doing something new. And learn how to functionally combine technology and fashion. I definitely did that. I got my butterflies onto a dress. It looks great. It works great. So yeah. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Have you worn the dress?
No, it's not my size.
Oh. Has someone worn the dress?
I want to get someone to wear the dress.
Okay.
So. Oh, ears. Hard to put on.
Yeah, and also with the battery packs.
Yeah, I definitely think if someone wore it, it would look really bulky because all of the like things are stitched like right on the stomach area. So I think it would also be uncomfortable to wear, but maybe. We'll see. Yeah.
I noticed that you use filament printing to print your wings. Did you look into other manufacturing methods, or just because that was what was the way?
No, I just think I knew the most about 3D printing, so I just stuck with 3D printing my classroom. Yeah.
Did you model your butterfly wing after a specific butterfly?
I think, well, I searched up butterfly on my phone, and I think I was modeling it after a monarch butterfly. But I wasn't like, that wasn't intentional, it was just the nicest one that popped up on Google.
Do you plan on making more?
Maybe. I think it would be cool to make more, but that's like, then I would have to buy more Arduinos and more motors, so we'll see, maybe. Shall see.
Would you consider redesigning the butterfly wings to be more streamlined?
I don't know. I think I want to make them thinner, maybe. Maybe make them move more efficiently, but I don't know. What?
Is there anything you would have changed if you were to do this project again?
I think I would spend less time doing the Tinkercad tutorials in the beginning and kind of just go more into figuring out how to make the butterfly wings move instead of just the one.
Would you consider making the wings flexible and able to move so it's not still?
Ooh, that would be cool. I feel like that's a really good idea, yeah. Yeah. Honestly, yeah, that would be cool. And if I made money off of it, that would be awesome. Yeah.
So have you considered using maybe less complex hardware, like a Raspberry Nano or something even smaller?
I haven't thought about that, but that would be something I would have to look into.
If you were to wear it for like a long time with it on, would it get like hot or snow?
That's a good question. I haven't seen, because I've been a little scared to keep it on for too long because of that reason. I don't want the dress like burning or something, but maybe. I'm not totally sure about that.
How much money did you spend on it?
Honestly, not that much. Like, the Arduino was, I think, like $20. The motors were like $8 each, like, for a pack of 3. I didn't have to pay to print 3D print, and the dress is like $10. So probably less than $100.
Okay, thank you.